Hey Movement Masters, Sean Mishka here from Movement Mastery at OptimizeMovement.com. Today I want to bring both the mailing list and the Movement Mastery membership subscribers some content that I believe will deliver one of the most important concepts to grasp onto if we are to ever create an environment in which athletes reach their highest levels of movement mastery and athletic performance. This topic revolves around the idea of movement quality versus movement quantity. As I believe you will see with me as we progress, not only today, but well into the future, this very balance between the quality and quantity in our training and coaching practices could make or break your athlete's performance, as well as determine if and when that individual can gain greater optimization of their individual movement patterning. Now, some of you have probably seen this picture before, and at very minimum, if you watch any football whatsoever, you likely at least know who this guy is. This is Robert Griffin III, the star quarterback of the Washington Redskins. This particular shot was taken when he participated at the 2012 NFL Combine and while he was executing the broad jump. Of course, after his performance, all of the NFL pundits raved about Griffin's explosiveness and his power, especially for a quarterback. Of course, this was all based on the objective data that was attained in regards to the outcomes he achieved. And over time, we are going to continue to see a reoccurring problem here with this type of evaluation because most in our professions are doing just that, where they are gauging one's performance based on an outcome from an athlete and not from the specific movement analysis that's taken during the execution of specific tasks. If the determination of was RG3 great, yes or no, would have come from a more detailed investigation as to what was truly occurring during the executed movement actions, most should have quickly realized that not only did a good number of energy leaks occur here throughout the biodynamic structure of most of his movement patterns, from the most general to specific and more specialized patterns, but also that he could have a heightened risk of injury because of the nature of some of those energy leaks and some of those inefficiencies. If we look at those things, even an untrained eye when looking at this picture can see that this effort was pretty damn sloppy. It doesn't take long to see everything from the extreme knee knock that's occurring here, to the internal rotation, to the lack of hip flexion of a load-coral nature of the hip, to the arch collapse at the foot. However, most of those experts stopped at the fact that most quarterbacks can't jump 10 feet in the broad jump or 39 inches in the vertical. Thus, he must be moving optimally on another level, right? Wrong. From there, it can be hypothesized that this was not the first time that Griffin displayed these compensations throughout the biodynamic structure of this movement or any other, and furthermore, somewhere along the way, that behavior was obviously not corrected appropriately. So here's the thing. What is displayed in a movement in a controlled setting, such as at the combine, or in the weight room, or even on a practice field, is likely to become that much more magnified when push comes to shove and the athlete is tossed into his or her sport, in the chaos that the environment of that represents. Now, I'm not trying to poke fun of or make light of RG3's injury because I'm the last person to ever want to see anyone get injured, especially someone with the sheer athletic gifts that Griffin possesses. But could we have seen this coming? Now, this was at the end of the 2012 season in a fatigued state during a playoff game when RG3 tore his ACL and LCL of this leg through a very similar action as to what occurred that February prior when he performed at the combine in that same broad jump. Granted, he tweaked this injury earlier in the season, so to a certain degree of compromised movement patterning could be expected. And we can only speculate whether or not any injury of any nature could have ever been prevented with the implementation of any training means or methods, or even any overall coaching philosophy change. But I can tell you that if we go back or forward from the NFL Combine date, or even on this injury date, you can and will see similar kinesiological behavior occurring out on the field when he would run or change direction in any plane of movement. All of this was simply a brief illustration to show you that when challenged, the body will always choose the quantity of movement that it has performed repeatedly throughout over time, that we got to select that over the quality of movement. The brain is smarter than the body. And this challenge that I'm referring to here can come from when an athlete is in his or her chaotic environment and required to read and react, or when moving at maximum intensities and speeds or subjected to greater loads, or when the athlete is under tremendous fatigue. In each of these cases, or combination of these circumstances, the body will go into a fight or flight mode and then resort to the pattern that it has completed the most amount of times and accumulated the highest degree of comfort with. It is not just going to self-optimize its movement patterns out of nowhere. No matter how efficient and pretty we want that movement to be, and when it comes time to the greatest need, it's just not going to happen. Unless, of course, we properly intervene so that our nurturing can change that athlete's nature. How do we intervene appropriately, you might ask? Well, we prioritize quality over quantity. That's how. And only once we have the new acceptable display of quality can we then begin to add quantity and repetitions to that movement patterning. Think about the picture here. Most of us have seen this classic movie of The Karate Kid, right? This is my favorite scene from the movie, and yes, even more so than, the wicked-ass sweet crane kick that happens at the end to win the All-Valley Championships and get the girl. We've all seen this, most likely. Mr. Miyagi comes home from a successful day of fishing to see his little protege who has spent the whole entire day slaving over nothing but painting fences, sanding floors, and waxing cars. Of course, Daniel's son, appropriately, wants to know how these chores that he has been completing all day are going to help teach him karate. And Mr. Miyagi quickly does a demonstration for him. Long story short, watch a few of the nuances and lessons that we see Miyagi give Daniel's son, as well as each of us who have a place in the athlete's movement optimization process. Miyagi requires a very specific execution. And when Daniel tries to do it in a lazy fashion, or not exactly the way that Miyagi intended, what does he do? He stops Daniel and again requires him to do it exactly right. What happens then when Daniel starts doing it right, with concentrated and deliberate intention? Well, Miyagi adds some more stimulus. And in his case, or in this case, speed, and finally, he starts throwing a single punch at him. And then maybe a kick. And then slow combinations, and then all-out hand-to-hand combat ensues. All the time, Miyagi controlling the environment, while Daniel has to adapt in an appropriate fashion with the movement actions that he was taught during those chores. But only now, he's ready for it. So little by little, we see this unfold. Progression and movement optimization, and that process unfolds right in front of our very eyes. And what happens at the end due to all this, in this process, in this development? Yep, that's right. Daniel's son kicks some ass, wins the tournament, and most importantly, gets the girl. I know what some of you are probably thinking. The athlete is going to have to play the sport at some point, so we can't treat them with kid gloves forever. So, like a participant on The Price is Right, when they're playing the climbing game, at some point, they're going to be put on a pedestal and be required to bid on their movement and that which they can control. Now, my dad watches this damn show religiously like it's going out of style, so I've seen this game pretty often. Okay? The person waits and waits for the right time to say that the climber's in the range, in the range of the price of whatever fly product they're bidding on. All the while, this goofy music is playing in the background while the crowd is barking out instructions. All these things are combining to make the person panic more and more and make them more apprehensive so that they potentially could make a choice that they wouldn't normally do if they got a chance to think about it deliberately. Well, our athletes are going to be eventually placed under this same type of dilemma. They're going to be required to perform at the quality threshold. However, in our athletes' development process, no matter where they may reside when it comes to the level of particular movement mastery, we owe it to him or her to not require them to overbid in any way. If the athlete is required to overbid in any way, he or she will resort to panicked old behavior, the one behavior that is accumulated over time. And that behavior is likely not the one that we are chasing from a quality standard. So, some quick rules of thumb here as to what not to do in our training or sport practices. These things are imperative to ensuring that when our quantity meets our quality, we like the performance result of what is displayed in our movement outcome. First of all, never add anything, volume or quantity of reps, or greater intensities, either in regards to required speeds or the loads that we are subjecting the athlete to, until and unless movement quality is at our standard for that given athlete in that given movement pattern. On that same note, if quality begins to suffer, figure out a way to back off on the volume or intensity until it improves again. This doesn't matter how many sets or reps or whatever load you had originally prescribed in your sweet master training mind. Subpar movement is subpar movement, and it absolutely cannot be accepted. Second, to piggyback on that last idea, never allow athletes to get away without focusing deliberately on what it is that they are doing and how it is that they are completing the task. Like Miyagi, no bad reps are allowed. Only perfect practice makes perfect, because we know that any practice makes permanent. Finally, we must remember that what works for one will not work for the same way for another. This is referring to a few things. Number one, the process of attaining movement mastery. Number two, the quantity of work that can be done without losing the quality of the efforts. And number three, the specific technical execution of any movement pattern that will be representative of the highest quality of display for that particular individual. These are all topics that we're going to continue to elaborate on over time here at OptimizeMovement.com. This brief introduction into the relationship of the movement quality and quantity was just meant to be one that will hopefully spark some thoughts on all of our ends and ultimately get you thinking about your own training practices that you currently employ. At the end of the day, if we want quality to trump quantity, we must emphasize it appropriately through our movement optimization process. If you liked what you saw here and aren't a member yet of the Movement Mastery membership site, I think you're going to enjoy some of the content if you did become a member. And if you are a member, you're a total champion in my book already. For Movement Mastery and OptimizeMovement.com, this has been Sean Mishka. I hope to speak with you all again soon. Till then, let's all continue to master the art of optimizing movement.